the Public Works, Finance, and Safety Committee meeting of Monday, July 20th, 2020 to order. Roll call, please, Kristen.
Okay. Sorry. Albertson,
Present.
Bueller,
Here.
Hoyer. Okay. Helene.
Here.
Lalum,
Here.
Manti,
Here.
Rademski,
Here.
Roby,
Here.
Billhauer,
Here.
Y.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion by Lalum and a second by Helene. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Okay. Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Helene.
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public input. This is the time reserved for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so, or to speak online. Please state your name and for the record before making your comment and request permission to speak. Is there anyone here that would like to speak or online?
No doubt. Nope.
All right, seeing no one, we'll move on. The next item is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Vilhauer and a second by Helene. Oh, sorry, God, Lalum, here I go. It's gonna be one of those nights. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen, roll call vote.
Okay. Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Helene.
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6 is the regular agenda, and A is authorization to pay the South Dakota Department of Transportation, SDDOT, invoices S00112908 and S00113837 in the amount of $29,736 for project number 1802, Highway 212 reconstruction by reallocation of the current 2020 Capital Improvement Fund budget.
So moved.
Have a motion by Lalum and a second by Vilhauer. Any discussion? All right, I will ask Heath to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council may recall, back in 2018, we entered into an agreement with the South Dakota DOT for some cost sharing on some components that the city had interest in seeing done on Phase 1 of Highway 212. Some of those components include some fencing around some of our drainage structures and some more aesthetically pleasing handrails and things on the bridge structure and on Highway 212, and then also some powder coating or black epoxy painting of the streetlight poles as well. And all those components have been complete now that Phase 1 of Highway 212 is done, and the DOT has submitted these invoices to us for our reimbursement to them for those components. This amount, this $29,736, was not in the 2020 budget. I think that probably stems back to 2018. We had a transition between city engineers. I don't think we had a good solid idea how much these improvements were going to cost us. They were kind of more rough estimates. So a budget number never got submitted and carried through into the 2020 budget. So that's why, in talking to Kristen, this was the best way that her and I felt it was appropriate to bring forward to council so that you guys approve these invoices being paid. And then also explained to the council that her and I have put together, facilitated a plan, along with Justin, the assistant city engineer, on how to cover these expenses out of the 2020 CIP budget. So we are confident that we have this money available in the 2020 CIP budget, and due to the shuffling of project funds and are proposing that the council approve these invoices be paid.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Councilman Vilhar?
Heath, a question on the moisture and density test invoice. That is solely our, that's solely our share? I mean, in other words, we don't, that's not DOT or the utility department doesn't share in that at all?
Yeah, great question, Councilman Vilhauer. If I could defer to Justin on that. I know that him and Marcy had combed through these invoices in a lot more detail than I did. Justin, I believe, is online with us. Do you have a comment on that, Justin or Marcy?
Can you repeat the question? I was out of Justin's office at the time.
My question on the moisture and density test invoice, that is solely our responsibility versus any kind of sharing with either the DOT or the utility department?
It was shared with the utility department. They were billed separately,
Oh,
and so they paid for their portion. This portion was billed to us for ours.
okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please. Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Pauline, Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rudemsky,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Vilhauer,
Aye.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item B is authorization for the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with HDR Engineering, Inc. for the primary clarifier number 2 replacement project number 2022, in the amount of $166,489. Motion by Helene
Second.
and a second by Lallam. And I'll have Heath tell us about this, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This item pertains to, we've had a lot of work going on at the wastewater treatment facility, and this one stems back several months now to where when we were doing some preliminary design work for the new admin building, and then subsequent to that, when our previous wastewater treatment facility project was being completed, we noticed the operations staff out at the wastewater treatment facility noticed issues with primary clarifier number 2. And so what we did is we had HDR, we already had them on the hook, so to speak, for other design elements out there at the facility. We had them go ahead and give us an assessment on this. It was kind of a preliminary structural analysis of the primary clarifier. And since that point, we've gotten recommendation from them that we do need to replace the clarifier. It's not structurally salvageable in simple terms. There are some components of it that are salvageable, but it's looking like a full reconstruct is in order for that primary clarifier. And that's what their structural analysis showed us, that HDR performed for us at no charge. And subsequent to those discussions, we had HDR put together a proposal for the design services for the primary clarifier reconstruction. And that's what's before the council tonight. That's $166,489 contract with HDR for their design services. And also on the line I have Mike Berger, the wastewater superintendent. He could talk circles around me on the technicalities needed here, and I defer to him for any specifics in that regard. But in a nutshell, staff does recommend approval of this contract for HDR's design services, and then we would be bringing forth subsequent actions as well related to the construction, the funding of this project, highly likely to be through the State Water Fund and the programs that they offer for the SRF loans. But those would all come subsequent to getting the design accomplished. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I would. I would just add that, as you mentioned, they did an evaluation of the clarifier. Back at those days, we were hoping it would be rehabilitated, but just looking at the 60-year-old concrete in that structure, it's exhibiting some silica-alkali reaction, which just simply means crumbling concrete. And the outside concrete trough around the tank goes all the way around the exterior circumference of the circular tank. That trough has to be taken off and replaced. It cannot be repaired. And as I mentioned, the wall is crumbling, so part of the vertical wall would have to be removed. And additionally, on the floor, there's a 2-inch sacrificial slab over the base slab, and that has significant crumbling on it. So you have to take that off to see how much damage is on the base slab. So with rehabilitation, HDR had stated that there are significant uncertainties about how effective that would be, because you're trying to repair 60-year-old concrete and bind it together with new concrete. That they thought it was, they do not recommend rehabilitation, they recommended replacement. Additionally, one of the other major components of the clarifier is the clarifier mechanism. It's much like, well, it's kind of like the hands of a clock. You have a center column pipe, which is the influent pipe to that tank, and on that sits the collector drive. Off of the collector drive hangs the collector mechanism, and there's a metal baffle that directs the flow downward. All those metal components that are composed, that make up that clarifier drive, they were constructed back in those days with plain steel, not stainless steel. So they have told us that pretty much almost all of those structural members have experienced significant section loss, which means if you were to cut that piece of steel in half and look at the thickness today, as opposed to the original thickness, it's all been reduced and has lost strength. And a particular concern would be that center pipe where the water comes in. It's the pedestal that holds the collector mechanism, but it's also the influent pipe. That's got holes through the pipe at the base, and that interferes with the efficiency of the tank. It's no longer capable to move and turn as it should, and scrape the solids to the center of the tank. But also at the same time, water is coming in. Some water is squirting out at the base of that, where the several holes have rusted through, and that sort of stirs up the solids that you're trying to settle out. So all things considered, HDR's recommendation is to go with a new tank. They think that the rehabilitation cost could possibly equal the cost of the new tank because of the greater time, and then you would still have, with rehabilitation, you'd still have the old concrete married to the new concrete, and that would really reduce the expected life expectancy of the finished product, because you'd have this fix and it's a questionable fix. So that's about all I have to say about that, I guess. And so tonight we want to proceed with the design, because in these projects like this, much like the admin project, there's significant contingencies in the opinion of probable construction costs at this point, because you really don't know what you're going to build. So what we really need to do now is move forward with the design, and then that design will refine and hopefully reduce, as it did with the admin building, reduce the opinion of probable construction costs. But it's going to give us a more realistic number. It's going to tell us roughly what it's going to cost us, subject to whatever's going on in the bidding climate at the time of bidding. But the next step is to go through design, and I think we also mentioned in the RCA that we should probably go on the state water plan. We don't know if or how much funding we're going to need, but we want to be prepared to have funding in place if we do need it. So at some point, we will want to come back with an application to get on that state water plan, because I think although the administration building is about $1 million under budget, we do have our cash reserves are fairly low. But as you know, we're also going through a rate study. So hopefully by the time we go through the design and get this project on the state water plan, then we'll have realistic costs, and we can look and see how much funding we're actually going to need.
And that plan to be on, to potentially get an SRF is something I talked briefly with Kristen about this morning, as frequently as this morning, actually. And her and I were on the same page that it's likely we're going to want to exercise that funding source once we get to that point in the process. But it's important to note that HDR services do include getting us on the state's water plan, and that's part of this contract. One other thing I want to verify with you, Mike, primary clarifier number 2 is currently down, correct? Is not operable?
Yes, the collector mechanism will no longer work. Again, that pipe that supports it is rusted through, and all of those steel members are thin, so it's out of service. And with clarifier number 2 out of service, we cannot take clarifier number 1 out of service, to perform the maintenance on that tank, some of the things that need to be done to that tank. So you really have to, when you need one in wastewater, you always usually have two, because you need one when one fails or one's down for service. So yes, this clarifier is out of service. Number one's in full-time service and does need some maintenance as well.
Thanks, Mike, and that's exactly why I wanted to bring that point up, is usually at a wastewater treatment plant, there is redundancy for that reason. You can take one unit offline while the other one's operating, so you can do maintenance. But this one in particular is why it's important for us to continue this project. It has been down for quite some time, and something we need to get back up and running again for the plant, redundancy.
So is the plan to just demolish number one? Or this is number two that we're talking
Yes.
about. So we'll demolish number one and rebuild while
On
number
that
two
same
is
site.
working?
Yes. It's confusing because the newer clarifiers, number one, just the way things are numbered through the plant, it had to be built west of the existing clarifier. So the old clarifier, which we think is number one, is actually number two. But yes, we would build on that same site. And the other thing that they mentioned, underneath that floor, there's some 60-year-old piping that will also get replaced. So we're going to end up with a new tank with a much greater lifespan life expectancy than a rehabilitation job. And either way you look at it, it's significant money. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Are there some comments and questions? Councilman Lallam?
Mike, on that, you said it's a 60-year-old facility, or that particular unit's 60 years old roughly now?
Yes.
Okay, so the other one is significantly newer, correct?
Yeah, the other one is 24 years old.
Okay, what is worst-case scenario if that one would go down before we get this other one replaced?
Well, we would probably at that point, we'd probably have the state tell us to get busy and take care of the repairs or whatever, because we won't get proper treatment. We really need primary clarification is simply settling. Water goes through there. This clarifier creates a quiescent zone, so scum floats. We skim it off the top. Sludge settles to the bottom, and that sludge gets pumped off to go to the digester to be treated. And without that, all those solids, if you don't have a primary clarifier, all those solids that you're capturing in it are going downstream, and they're going to have a significant detrimental effect to all other processes. We would struggle to meet permit limits, and there would be other consequences, such as these solids would show up in other processes.
What kind of time frame are we looking at? It looks like they're looking at opening bids towards the end of the year. So we're looking not starting construction until next spring?
Yes.
Yeah, based on the timeline that HDR has proposed, that's looking to be the most feasible time to get to the construction, to be this spring.
And that's the quickest it's potentially going to be able to do it?
Yeah, correct.
All right, Councilman Billhauer?
Heath or Mike, I've got a question, not on the project, because the technology that is, I'm trusting you guys to that. But I've got a question. I know this does not need to be bid out, and we've worked with HDR for a long time. But for our sake and for members of the public that might be weighing in, $166,000 for a design of something, that's a lot of money. I mean, are they the only fish in the sea out there, or do we just implicitly trust them? Or you hear where I'm coming from as far as does somebody else out there do this sort of work that might be a little more competitive? Just a comment to that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Councilman Philhauer, and a good point to make, particularly on the record as we're making approvals for items and contracts such as this. So Mike and I talked extensively about that ahead of having HDR submit a proposal. And it really came down to the relationship that we've got with this consultant at our wastewater treatment facility, their in-depth knowledge of our operations out there. And primarily, the biggest component was the fact that they did this preliminary structural analysis for us and came to the recommendations that they did in the findings of that structural analysis. We felt it certainly made sense to piggyback off that structural analysis on into a full development contract with HDR, based again on the sheer knowledge that they had of the system and of this particular primary clarifier that we need to have replacement work done on. Mike, I don't know if you have anything further to add to that, but that's in a nutshell is where we stood on that.
Yeah, that evaluation, I think we budgeted $40,000 for that, and we were I think we had a contract with them to perform that. And then we canceled the contract because it wasn't needed to spend that money. And there was a savings of $34,985 on that contract. But yeah, they know our plant well, and time is of the essence, I think, at this point. The sooner we get up and back to 2 clarifiers, the better off we're going to be, because we just don't know what's going to happen with clarifier number 1, if anything, hopefully nothing. So I think timing is important right now.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Any other questions from the council or comments? Not seeing any, so I will look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please, Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Pauline, Lalem,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
Why?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item C is approval of the bid award for the Lake and Pesca Trail Final Loop Improvements, Phase 1, project number 1726 to Dunick, Inc. in the amount of $579,277.
So moved.
Motion by Vilhauer and a second by Helene. And we do have our design engineer, Vanessa Victor. We have the Public Works Director, and we also have the Parks and Rec Director, Terry Kelly, here. And I think, Terry, I'll ask you to tell us about this project first.
Okay, yeah, I'll start. Obviously, we got a team of players here for discussion. We did open bids July 14th. We had one bidder, which was Dunick, and that bid did come in at $579,277, which was slightly about 10% higher than Infrastructure's engineer estimate. And I'll turn it over to Vanessa to discuss kind of why we felt that happened. But this does come with a recommendation both from the consultant and the staff for award. But with that, Vanessa or Justin, Vanessa, why don't you just go ahead and jump in and talk about it?
Can do. Thanks, TK. A lot of the bid prices were actually in line and have actually been better than the majority of bid prices for at least asphalt that the city has seen recently. So we believe that those were very good numbers. What we were surprised by was actually some of our forestry items within the bid tab. We opened it up for a possibility that the contractor could either construct the project this year, or we had a bid alternate for completion next year. The contractor actually wants to complete the project this year, wants to get going as soon as possible, has opening in their schedule, and so they provided a more competitive bid for completion yet in 2020. As far as the forestry items, there is some room for potential cost savings by removing those from the actual project within a change order and going with a contracted unit price that TK has with his forestry division, or if he has the manpower to do them themselves, or we can award the project as is. In general, it is 10% higher than our estimate, but we feel in order to keep this project going, time is of the essence. We started talking to the landowners out there well over 2.5 years ago. So they're all pretty antsy to either see this project or see it go away. So we'd like to see the project.
All right, thank you. Yes, we would like to see it. Terry, can you just describe where the project starts and ends so people can understand that?
Sure. Yeah, this phase one actually just up from the prop from Pesca Drive. Again, Palm Pesca, not Compesca. If you go past the prop where we entered that trail system, we would pick up at Palm Pesca. It would go along South Lake Drive and end up, easy way to kind of refer to it as 4th Avenue where the water tower is, which would be Spooner Drive. If you can kind of just picture that water tower where 4th Avenue comes straight out of town, where it hooks onto South Lake. So that would be the roughly just shy of 1 mile of trail. Again, basically for ease of understanding, Hidden Valley to 4th Avenue is basically the route on this phase 1 project. And I didn't touch on, Mayor, but for the council's knowledge, we sit at $960,000 in our trail improvement fund. So the dollars are there for this project. And we'll talk a little bit more on the next agenda item, but of the 579,000, we do have 960,000 sitting in funds as we speak. So
And that's just
Any
for
other
trail?
questions?
You have
Yeah,
that?
that's just trail improvement or trail building repair, whatever it is. So
Right, thank you. Okay, questions, Councilman Lallam?
Thank you. Terry, on that, or Vanessa, I guess either one of you may answer. When would they start on construction on that?
I'll lean on Vanessa for that one.
That's really as soon as we can get a notice of award to them and get a pre-construction meeting scheduled. But ideally, they would like to start in early August.
In a timeframe
So it'll be
timeframe to complete?
They have until basically the asphalt plants shut down. So it is November 1 in the plans, but if asphalt plans shut down earlier, then that's kind of their completion date.
And they feel that they can get that finished before that's done?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
There are liquidated damages, Councilman Lowell, if they don't complete the project on time.
Thank you.
All right, Councilman Vilhar?
TK, or is Matt on the line? Matt's probably cringing already when I'm going to ask this question. What kind of communication have we had with the landowners out there as of late? Where are we at in that whole discussion by now?
And I'll probably have Matt or Vanessa clean up this conversation, but we have the Arnold property where we do have some current property that would be given to the city that we'd have to look at, a garden here, a shed there, kind of things. But Matt, Vanessa, other than that, I think we're pretty wrapped up with those conversations. If you guys want to jump in.
Go ahead. Vanessa.
Okay. As far as actual easements and actual property that is owned by other individuals, we have construction easements and all the permanent easements that we need to either maintain any infrastructure on somebody else's property or for the contractor to access the site during construction. And we set those up with significant buffer zones, so we should not hinder anybody's property that we don't have an easement on. The biggest thing in play is the Carter land that was donated, which is now city-owned land. And since it's city-owned land, we do not need an easement on it, but there are some existing temporary easement. There are some existing garden structures that would be in the way on city-owned land that will not be hindered with the construction of this project.
Are the landowners aware of where we stand in the project by now? I mean, have there been communication on a regular basis with them lately?
Not to my knowledge.
I guess I would strongly suggest, in light of the feelings that we heard last year about this time, that there be some prompt communication made with the landowners out there.
What would you suggest the communication
Well,
entail?
just an update as far as where we are in the project, that we're looking at a start date here coming up before too long. I think just as a courtesy to them, they'll let them know what's going to be happening when.
Glenn, we do actually do that when we start a project. So as soon as there's a notice to award, there will get a letter
Okay.
that we'll send out from our office that explains when the contractor plans on mobilizing the site, gives them a chain of command for who they can contact if they have
Okay.
concerns during the project.
Okay. And then that will still cross over on to the other side of South Lake Drive for the last stretch to the water tower, is that correct? And that's on right-of-way for that part of it? Because I know there was some concern by a couple of landowners out there, but again, that's right-of-way, as I understand it out there. So that's still the plan?
Correct.
I, just a comment, I say, whatever time I have left in the council, I would love to see that trail project finished around the lake. So I'm hoping whatever time I have here yet that we get that job done.
That makes a lot of us, Glenn. That's definitely one we want to see completed, so.
Yeah.
I do have one more follow-up question. Maybe we take a vote on this, but I do have a question for TK on this after we take a vote.
After the vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions before we vote? Not seen any, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please, Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Mueller,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
Why?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, Councilman Villar?
TK, because I had to ask a question myself here of you a week or two ago. Do you want to update us as far as what the rest of, and I know you've given this to us any number of times, but one more time, what the timetable is for the rest of the project around the lake?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is in a best case scenario. We do have, phase 3 and 3B and phase 2. And what really is going to determine which one we do first is really the state's plan on what they're going to do through Sandy Shores. Vanessa and I, with the grant dollars, anticipate 3A and 3B in 2021, and then coming back with phase 2, which would link basically again to the water tower to Sandy Shores in probably 2022. So that's an ideal time frame if we don't run into any hurdles, provided we get the grant dollars for phase 3B, which Vanessa just submitted, I believe, last Thursday for that $380,000 grant. So if everything goes in place, 2022 would wrap up our complete phased, provided the state does do their share within Sandy Shores recreational area. And Vanessa, feel free to clarify or confirm that that's kind of our plan.
I would agree with basically everything TK said. We want to do the whole leg on Old South Dakota 139 there from 212 to Parkview Drive kind of at once. Get the contractor, that way even residents out there don't have to deal with traffic control or anything on the streets for 2 summers in a row. So intention is we will get 3B, we will design it, we will get that out to bid for that whole phase together, and then it leaves Sandy Shores in the wings and in between. If the city has an influx of cash, because I'm sure you guys have been having a lot of extra dollars these days, we can finish up the last little section of phase 2. Phase 2 actually shrunk considerably because the state is picking up a lot of the trail within their state park of Sandy Shore. They want to embrace the bicycle path, so it's nice.
Thank you.
Does that answer that, Glenn?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe at a future meeting, it'd be nice to see the map showing where those 3A, 3B, and 2 lie on the map, so the council can be reminded. I was just looking for it, but I don't have it at my fingertips. Okay, moving on. Item D is approval of the bid award for the 2020 Park and Rec Improvements Project number 2018, Schedule A only, to Dunick, Inc., in the amount of $55,672, and rejection of the bids for Schedules B and C. Motion by Lallam and a second by Holeen, and Terry, I'll let you kick this one off too.
Okay, I'll kick it off with, again, July 8th was the bid opening. Justin, Heath, and their staff broke this into 3 schedules. Try to get more competitive bids, bidding as a package. Breaking it down, Schedule A was the Mount Hope Cemetery Road. Schedule B was Olive Place Bike Trail. And Schedule C was some roadways, walkway repairs within the zoo. After bid opening, as staff, we discussed this, and within the budgetary allotments, we felt Schedule A could be awarded for the cemetery roadways. It is approximately $5,500 over budget, but I do have the means to recover those expenses due to other projects coming in lower or that we're not doing currently. We do recommend Schedule B, the Olive Place, and Schedule C, the Zoo Walkway, to reject those bids just because the dollars are not there. And in the last agenda item, Olive Place Bike Trail, with the bid that we just approved, roughly, about 70,000 over, I felt that that connector area, we really needed to save those funds. After this project, we're going to probably be down to about 400,000 in that account. And we did just get the FAA approval on 21st Street Trail. So I reprioritized our trail system where I would rather see 21st Street get completed prior to the Olive Place connector route. So, and Justin's worked a lot of hours on this. So Justin, feel free to jump in and clarify anything I might have missed.
I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay.
At $145 a ton for hot mix, I think maybe we'll get a better bid some other day. That's, ouch. So the cemetery is still pretty high at $119 a ton, but not quite as bad. So,
Right.
all right. Do we have questions or comments from Councilman Vilhauer?
TK, refresh my mind, that zoo walkway, that was not a serious issue relative to the accreditation process, was it, or is it?
No, this is strictly a maintenance item, nothing to do with
Okay.
accreditation.
Okay,
This is basically, from the Discovery Center back to the Camel area, Bison area, just a housekeeping maintenance item, but
Okay.
nothing to do with accreditation.
okay, thank you.
You bet.
All right, are there other questions or comments from the council? Nobody? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen, roll call vote, please.
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Colleen, Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Vilhauer,
Aye.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item E is approval of bid award for the 2020 Pavement Management System, Schedule C, Neighborhood Street Reconstruction Project Number 2004 to Dunick, Inc. in the amount of $392,844.25.
So move.
A motion by Helene and second by Vilhauer. And I'll ask Heath to tell us about this one, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of our pavement management program projects that we run annually, a couple of which the council's already approved, such as the mill and overlay. We have a $900,000 project going already right now within the city with the mill and overlay project. This one was postponed. Once COVID came on, we kind of held back on this project because of the amount of it and not knowing how things would fall here as we crept out of some of the COVID conditions that we've been in. We are at the point, though, where we felt, in conversing with the finance officer, again, Kristen and I getting together, looking at these projects, prioritizing them, making sure we are moving forward with what we're comfortable at a staff level to present to council to move forward with. This is one of those projects that we deemed necessary to move forward with. This particular one is, we call it the Pavement Management System Schedule C. It's a neighborhood project where we find streets within any given neighborhood or multiple neighborhoods throughout the community and and scope the needs for the street reconstruction or mill and overlay type of work in those neighborhoods. This one specifically is located on 14th Avenue Northeast, and I'll share my screen here quick. My map is uploading very slowly when I'm using the GIS map, so I'll just use this attachment to the agenda item, which has, this is essentially the front page of our plan sheet, and it gives the two locations of these two streets that this project consists of. So 14th Avenue Northeast here from 19th Street east all the way to the extent of where it becomes a full street section. This segment, I don't know if anybody's driven this lately, but it's blown up in several areas, almost along the whole stretch, to where the asphalt that's there has become granularized and pulverized to where it's almost like a gravel road now in most places. This was brought to our attention earlier this spring when the street superintendent started getting some calls up there, the need for some maintenance. This particular street was not on our radar to do this year, but given the way that it blew up on us this spring, we felt that it was important to plug it into this year's projects. The other location is down here on 5th Avenue Southwest, and there's a stretch here as well that's been torn up for a while. Rob and his crews had to do some removals in there last year, and it's been gravel surfacing since, or maybe some crushed asphalt that they put down to help mitigate the dust issues. But an ongoing maintenance issue nonetheless, and again, an area that needs to be paved back in and repaired. So these two locations are what's included in this scope of work that's being proposed for a contract award tonight. And again, the bids came in a little higher than the engineer's estimates. Percentage-wise, they're quite a bit higher. They're 28% higher than what we anticipated. And if you pick out the few items in here, I think Justin might know these off the top of his head, but asphalt might have been one of them, but there were other components in there too that just came in. The removals were about twice what we thought they were going to be, and anyway, the nature of the bid is what it is that we've got before us, but we were confident, and even though the price came in higher than we anticipated, we are confident that the CIP fund can handle this amount of a bid award for these roads. And we do feel that they are in a position that need to be done yet this year. So that's why we're bringing forth recommendation of the contract to the council.
All right, thank you. Why do you suppose the unclassified excavation has been high on projects this year? That's kind of a surprise.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know, Justin, do you have any insight on that one, the unclassified X, why you think that might be coming in higher? Have you or Marcy reviewed that?
I don't know why. My suspicion is just that it's late season work. It is quite a bit higher, and I don't have a good answer.
That's often one that can spiral if we hit a bad spot in the subgrade that we weren't anticipating and be a lot higher than our estimates. That makes me nervous when I see an item like that where we don't have a lot of control over what the volume's going to be and the unit price is considerably higher. But what do you do? Councilman Roby?
On 14th, when was that road originally constructed and why did it deteriorate so rapidly?
Original construction, Justin, or maybe the mayor, do you have that knowledge? Was it 2007 era?
Boy. I think it was before that.
Justin, do you or Marcy have that information from the research you guys did?
I want to say it was about 15 years old, 15 to 20 years old.
Some of the reasons for the potential cause for the failure that we saw this year, it is a half street section. So the north half is exposed to a rural ditch or a swale where water can tend to collect during rain events or some duration after rain events. Sometimes that can cause, water to migrate underneath the road section. Your biggest enemy for any street section is water. And then you get water underneath that street section. That's one of the things that's most known for causing early failures. Because once that water's in that street section, you go through your freeze-thaw cycles. That tends to expand and contract everything underneath the road, and then it subsequently migrates to the pavement surface and starts to affect that as well, particularly with the loading in the springtime if you have a saturated road condition. It's kind of speculation on my end, but Justin, you remember what the section was that's out there? Is there, as far as the depth of base course that's under that road right now?
It varied. It was a lot of it was about 7 inches. There was sections that were up to 12 inches, but it was about the 7 to 9 inch range.
And is our reconstruction plan going to put full 12 inches back on as far as the base course?
Yeah, the total base section will be 8 inches and 4 inches asphalt.
Okay. So, trying to, make sure we have at least a sufficient adequate base course underneath that pavement section is step one in our reconstruction efforts, so that the drainage is performed adequately throughout the life cycle of that pavement. We have had discussions too on the half streets and how to, whether continue allowing for those or how to best consider those situations when they're presented to us as things develop. When you've got land adjacent that still remains in the county and a developer that wants to build and develop in the city. And I don't want to say that this being a half street is completely the reason for the early failure, but I do definitely think that it had something to do with it. It's not a conventional urban street section with curb and gutter and storm sewer and where the water and stormwater runoff is mitigated a little more effectively.
All right, Councilman Lallam?
I would guess a portion of that is because it is a half street, there is more traffic on the other side. I mean, just noticing people driving there. I don't drive in the gravel portion, they move over, so I would assume there's probably more actual traffic that's on the middle to the south side of that street either way. Because I have family that lives up there, and when they go there, they're never driving on the gravel portion. So,
All right. Looks like that was platted in 94. So, all right. Other questions or comments from the council? Councilman Lallam?
Kristen, where will we be moving money from? Just from street repair?
For this project, we actually, Heath, Justin, and I did go through the capital improvement budget for 2020. And the plan is that there's a couple of projects that we just will not be proceeding with. So we'll be using those funds and kind of changing the course of action.
No dire situations that are coming up that we're aware of, that we're taken from, are there?
No, these are kind of the dire ones that were flashing at us.
They're pretty dire right now.
Yeah, so
Flaming.
knock on wood, that's, we hope we're in good standing here to move forward with these and get us through this year and look on it in next year.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Councilman Vilhar?
I guess I'll ask the question because maybe it does tie into it. I asked you this last week, Heath. Where do we stand on the Jackson Park and the City Park parking lot projects? Where are we at with those projects this summer?
Yeah, so those are still in the CIP. They are, there's funds that were committed as of last year for those projects. And we are under contract to have those done also with Dunick. And we're looking at doing Jackson Park yet this fall. I believe the anticipated availability of the contractor wasn't until after Labor Day in order to perform the Jackson Park improvements. The city park improvements, we've put the brakes on. It's, the conditions there still aren't favorable to go in and do this work. We feel we're gonna be running into water issues, high water issues, saturated, issues underneath the pavement. And one of the things that, staff and I, and we'll continue to work on with TK, Park and Rec Director, is to maybe look at holding off on that phase of the work and look at a larger scale project. I know that the north part of the campground, for example, has some issues, some drainage concerns, camping pad issues, some utility pad issues, pedestal issues. And maybe it's a larger project that we still do these improvements and earmark some money for, but also plug in some other adjacent work within that same city park area.
Okay, so those projects have no bearing on the funding for this project?
Nope, the funding for those are still locked in as of last year's funds that were rolled
Okay.
over into this year.
Okay, great. Thanks, Heath.
All right, any other comments or questions? See none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please. Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Vilhauer,
Aye.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is old business. Is there any old business? Not seeing any. Is there any, well, we do have a couple of items of new business. And Heath, I know you have a couple things. Do you want to pick which one you want to go first?
Yeah, if we could address 10th Avenue first, Mayor.
Okay. So 10th Avenue North Reconstruction Design Project number 2007, we're going to have a sidewalk discussion, so no action here. Right?
Correct.
Okay, so why don't you
We
tell us
will
about
look
that?
for guidance, though.
Okay.
In a nutshell, we've been gearing up and doing some design work on 10th Avenue North. I'll again share my screen and pull up the aerial map, imagery that we have. So here we have the hospital on the west side of the screen. And 10th Avenue North, of course, runs along the north side of the hospital and continues east all the way to Highway 81 and beyond. But the stretch in particular that we're talking about this evening is in relation to from Highway 81 west to 4th Street, so just northeast of the hospital property. And anybody that's familiar with this knows that as you get through 3rd and 4th Street here, 10th Avenue really widens up as you head west and go down the hill, and it's a lot wider street section. Now you go east of 4th, and it's a lot narrower through here, through this residential neighborhood. This is a project that's been in the queue in years past and has hit some delays and postponements along the way, and has resurfaced again and anticipated to be constructed in 2021, next year. So we're currently in a design contract with CDI out of Brookings, and they have roughly a 30+% design put together for this route, for the reconstruction of this, which includes some widening of the street. It'll include wider driving lanes that are than what's present now today. It'll include a center turn lane along this route to help mitigate all the driveways and all the side street turns that occur along this route. And we're also looking at bringing back a parking lane on the south side only along this stretch. And so with all those improvements being said, really the action tonight or the guidance tonight that we were looking for relates to the sidewalk. When looking at the design for this, we weren't able to accommodate sidewalk on the south side of this route. It was becoming too much of an encumbrance on the property owners by putting sidewalk in on the south. And what I mean by that is once we install sidewalk in on some of these areas, we effectively take away the use of these driveways that become blocked by a car parked in those driveways. So we've shifted the plan to include sidewalk and incorporate sidewalk on the north side only. Now with the street widening, the sidewalk alignment doesn't change a whole lot, but a little bit in some areas. Some of these lots don't have any sidewalk on them currently. Most of them do. Marcy's got a detailed analysis on what lots have sidewalk and which ones don't, that she's obtained when working with our consultant. The biggest question before the council tonight that we want some guidance on, so we know how to move forward with this project, is whether we would want to look at just incorporating that north side sidewalk into these project costs as a city expense as part of this project. Or the other option that we have, that the city has available to us, is to assess the sidewalk cost back to each and every one of these property owners. Now, I can point to some examples in the past where our urban system projects that are managed by the DOT, where the DOT has come in and managed the design and construction of the projects, we've gone ahead and included sidewalk in that project. 19th Street is a good example, I believe, in the not too distant past, where sidewalk was included the whole stretch and it was funded under our urban systems project. It was managed by the DOT. And then, of course, we have other examples where we do assess sidewalk costs to the homeowners. Given the widening of the street and the impact in this neighborhood, it is staff's recommendation to go ahead and incorporate these costs into this project. We're looking at a roughly, I think it was $90-some thousand total for the sidewalk on the north side of this street. And in relation to the total project cost, it is a small fraction of the overall expense of this roadway widening and this roadway reconstruction project. The project, while we're not purchasing any more right-of-way, we are gonna be encroaching into people's, what they're accustomed to feeling as part of their front yards. And then there's gonna be impacts in that regard to their driveways, their driveway lengths. In some cases, the sidewalk alignment and the sidewalk existence is gonna be different from what's been there in the past. So we think that there were enough talking points in this example for this project to go ahead and incorporate it into the city's funded portion of the project and not go through the formal assessment. But that is the question we wanted to pose to council, because it's obviously not a decision that staff should be making on our own, and wanted to check that off with the elected officials. And that's in a nutshell what I've got, and I know Marcy's standing by with Justin. They've got specifics. If we have questions here we want to hash out, we can do that.
Looks like most of the people have sidewalk. There are several sections, though, where they've never installed the sidewalk. And I'm just wondering, I mean, we have ordered people to put sidewalk in. It is by our ordinance, a requirement for the adjacent property owner to put sidewalk in. And some people have gone to that expense, others have not. What would make this project different where we wouldn't assess this, where we have assessed property owners in the past? What makes this different?
Well, I think the biggest example I have is probably that 19th Street. I don't believe were any of those properties
That
assessed.
was a state
No.
project. No, we didn't assess, but the city projects, we normally don't do that. The state does it and they pick it up.
It was that a state project? It was
Yes.
part of the Watertown's urban systems though, wasn't it?
Yes.
With our urban systems
Right.
funding? So now, instead of this, the DOT shifted how they manage those funds, and they just channel that money right to us, and they don't run those projects for us any longer. So you could look at this as an urban systems project, similar to what the state did on 19th Street, and apply it the similar way that they did. Again, if we wanted a comparison to use, that would be one that it was still using the same urban system funding. It was just managed by the DOT, which is different than how we do it now.
So would we still have a situation where we would assess sidewalks in the future? In what circumstances would we ask people to pay for their own?
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, the answer for that, I think, becomes a little bit subjective. But when you have a large rescale, reconstruct like this, just common practice from what I've seen in prior experience is that the city would pick up the dime for, again, the burden, the encumbrance on the adjacent landowners, us wanting to get it put in the way that we see fit with a project of this magnitude. I've seen that it common where they go ahead and proceed in that manner. And then, again, that's where the subjectivity comes into play, where if you have a smaller scale project or something that doesn't stretch for quite a length of this, or if you were just focused on sidewalk alone, obviously you could administer the sidewalk assessment on those kind of projects where you're ordering in sidewalk. but not necessarily reconstructing and widening the whole street, but just simply focusing on the sidewalk issue at hand.
And I think the council could do several things. There are, you're talking about, we could possibly even assess the rehabilitated sidewalk. By law, we have the ability to do that because it is the responsibility of the adjacent property owner to maintain the sidewalk. And I understand there are sections on here that are in pretty bad condition. And we could order the property owners to do it at their expense, or we would do it and assess it to them. So the council really has three choices. Assess all of it, assess none of it, or assess just that part which hasn't been constructed in the past, where they've never put the sidewalk in. So those are the questions. And it sounds like it's possibly not going to be a precedent-setting mechanism for us to be able to order sidewalks in the future, as long as it's not associated with a project. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I
you
would
say?
concur with that, Mayor, and your three options there are spot on with where I was going with the discussion. I think that's what it boils down to, is looking at those three options and deciding what's right for this particular project.
Okay. Well, council, you have some questions or thoughts on this?
Heath, just so that we know, what would be an example of how much it would cost to build a sidewalk in one of these residence lots?
Marcy, are you available to touch on some of the costs that you had calculated? Marcy or Justin?
Well, at the bottom there, you have 13.7 for the new sidewalk, which is covering 8 lots, or eight properties there. At 5 foot, I mean, you could figure out the length of it and do it that road. But the total cost is to remove and replace, as well as the new would be 97.
Yeah,
97.8.
and I think, most of the new locations were on this easterly end, where you have these two blocks.
Yeah, there's 8 actual houses there. 4 of those are technically would be considered side lots. Their houses faced, the front would face either east or west, and the other 4 face 10th Avenue. So I'm guessing that's part of the reason that there's no sidewalk in a couple of those. The corner lots are all facing the east-west location versus a north-south.
And I'm going off the top of my head, but I think, unless it's in the RCA, I think the rough estimates we had for the new sidewalk altogether was somewhere around 15,000. 14? And then the remainder of it, up to that 90-some total, was to replace everything else along the route. So the new, again, was a small portion of the total 90, it was 14 to 15 grand.
Yeah, you guys engineered estimate, you have just shy of $98,000, and 13.7 of that is for new.
Brand new.
So a typical single-family lot with 75-foot frontage and a 4-foot sidewalk, which is our minimum requirement, that would be about 3,000 square feet, or 300 square feet. 75 times 4, yeah, 300 square feet. And then if we've seen, it used to be $5 a square foot would pay for sidewalk, but it's more now. Like I see you did an estimate of $8 on another project. So that could be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000, $2,500 for a single lot. Councilman Roby, did you have a?
With all due respect to staff and such and their recommendations, I do weigh those recommendations heavily. If there's been one issue we've been inconsistent on, it's been this one with sidewalks in our city. And you can drive around parts of the town and we'll have ADA access on the corners and no sidewalks. And even though our ordinance says we're supposed to have sidewalks, we don't consistently enforce that. So the people that don't have sidewalks have had the benefit of not having to have paid for that, as well as the benefit of not having to shovel and keep those clean. And I can also tell you, you guys have all heard me say this before, up in my neighborhood when I moved to town, I saw baby strollers and wheelchairs in the gutter because there were no sidewalks in certain areas. And We have been unbelievably inconsistent with this. The sidewalks, some gravel roads, those kinds of things. I don't think the city is being heavy-handed in any way when we follow our ordinance that says, if we do these activities, when you buy the house, you accept those responsibilities. And what happens is, people come in, lobby their case, which we welcome people to come in. We want to hear people out. But the fact of the matter is, some people get the rest of the taxpayers to pay for their assessments and others don't. And we've all had somebody come up and ask us the question, why did I have to pay for that sidewalk or that road or whatever it was when I know other people don't have to? And we do not have a good answer for that. So my question is, or I guess my statement is, in the effort, in the interest of fairness, I don't know why we wouldn't assess these.
Well, and we have the ability, when it's assessed, if someone has a hardship, they can spread that cost over 10 years, and it comes on their taxes, so, you know, $300 a year or whatever. There is an interest. Go ahead.
I've had this discussion with people, and my response to the person that doesn't want to pay it is, what you want is the rest of the taxpayers to pay for that assessment. And that is what is being asked. And I just, again, I question the fairness of that to everybody else.
Councilman Vilhar?
I don't disagree with what you're saying, Don. My question is now, we're going to be requiring people on the north side of 10th Avenue to put the sidewalks in, but we're not going to be requiring people on the south side of 10th Avenue to put sidewalks in, so where's the fairness in that?
I see Councilman Albertson has his hand up. Want to go ahead?
Glenn just beat me to my point, and that was going to be that we're in this project, the engineering is recommending it for the north side. And if we said to the north side, you know what, you get the opportunity to pay for it, south side, you don't have to have it on your side for the circumstances. And I agree with that, but I think under this plan, I think that engineering is correct and that the city ought to just do it.
Councilwoman Manty?
Yeah, I'm sitting on both sides of the fence with this one. I wanted to echo that I have always felt, as Don does, that because my ward is full of inconsistencies with sidewalks and no sidewalks, and we have people pushing their baby carriages out into the street. So I would like to see us be more consistent with that. I guess I'd like to hear from Heath about, again, state why. I know it's because we would take too much of the people's front yards in order to put sidewalks on the one side of the street. But, okay, make the argument for us either way. I still feel like we could put sidewalks and on the, is that the north side, and assess those property owners. I guess I would have to hear why, other than we aren't putting them on the other side, but that seems to be a design issue more than just a where we need sidewalks. So I'd like to hear what would be an argument as to, well, if I say we should put sidewalks on there, other than the fact that they're not consistent on both sides of the street, what else would you give me for why we should pay for them? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Councilwoman Manty. Thank you for that. Again, I was just basing our recommendation on the recent history with 19th example. And then I think at some point too, you know, right, wrong, or otherwise, if the council did want to have a token of concession towards favoring the landowners, it would just be due to the sheer impact of a project like this, the nature of it, the widening of the street, the shortening of the driveways, and then, you know, one less thing that you need to come to the table with them on as far as temporary construction easement negotiations and all the other factors that come into this. Again, we're not having to procure any right-of-way, but that would be another consideration if we're having to procure right-of-way. The sidewalk and the cost of it becomes a negotiating chip or bargaining chip, if you will, in those processes. And I think that looking at this project of this magnitude, that's where we were leaning on that side of having this be a carrot of concession towards the landowners in their favor to go ahead and plug it in and include it with the full scope of the work that we'd be doing.
Councilwoman
Okay.
Rudensky? Oh, sorry.
Oh, that makes sense. I can understand that in terms of that. That does clarify it in my mind a little bit of why it would be making sense to go with the whole project. But I would like to emphasize that I'd like to see us be as consistent as possible going forward.
Heath, and all, on the sidewalk issue there, on the south side of the street there, what is the setback for that on the north and south side?
As far as if we were to put sidewalk
Well,
in?
if you were to put sidewalk on the south side also, would it be possible to put that right adjacent to the street rather than have a boulevard in there?
Yeah, that's actually an option we entertained, and I know Rob's not online here, but as we entertained that discussion, it became prevalent that that would become an ongoing operations nightmare for the street division of Public Works. Anytime we have curbside sidewalk without that boulevard for snow storage, it increases their workload, our cost to remove snow through the winter months, and the manpower and equipment needed to do that along that route.
Okay, next question then is how is the snow gonna be removed along Highway 212 with the sidewalks that are adjacent to the highway there?
Yep, and that's one of those encumbrances on the street division that are inherent to that project, that they are gonna have to, Rob's got a plan in place on how they phase that in, but it is an additional step that they now have to do because of losing that boulevard, snow storage capabilities.
But remember, it is the adjacent property owner's responsibility to remove the snow. The reason that our street department removes snow on these curbside sidewalks is because the plow piles up thick, heavy, icy stuff that's really hard for people to get with a shovel. You really kind of need a piece of equipment. That isn't always the case, but that's what ends up being the case is people go out there with their shovel and they can't even move it, and we've put it there. Mother Nature didn't put it there.
Yeah.
Councilman Roby?
Glenn makes a good point. My response to that is twofold. One, those on the south won't have to shovel. That's point number one. That's the good news. But the flip side again is, and this, again, I don't want this to sound heavy-handed, but when you buy a property, you assume the risk that goes with that property. And we'll use 212 for an example. There were a lot of people on 212 that lost frontage, they lost some parking space. It was kind of a tough construction for them because it cost them. And that's the risk when you buy. And I don't want to, I don't think that's unfair or heavy-handed at all to say that when you buy a property, you assume the future liabilities that go with that property. That includes if you own property and choose to buy property on a busy street that might someday get expanded, you got to take that risk. Or I guess it's your choice to take that risk. So I'm pretty firm in my belief on this one in that I'm not sure what the right decision here is, but I just don't think we can just give up on assessments because that's how we're supposed to build our streets and sidewalks.
Councilman Lallam?
We had a couple questions here. When is the 10th Avenue discussion? That's supposed to be the public discussion on that.
That was in, Marcy, what's the date we have for that landowner meeting?
July 28th,
28th.
next Tuesday.
Okay. My question is, we're expanding, I would assume we're expanding both directions, north and south on that road?
Correct.
I've gotten more calls on this one, obviously, because it's right up by where I live. But we're taking, I would assume, trees down, boulevards moving, things of that nature.
That's correct.
So if we were to replace sidewalk, whether we ask somebody else to pay for it or the homeowner, that goes with sprinklers and all the rest of the stuff will have to be done at the homeowner's expense as well?
Well, typically the sprinkler interruption with street widening, we would cover that as a cost under our project because of our causing it by the removal and widening of the curb alignment.
Okay. I get Don's point. Like I said, there's eight properties that are affected that don't have, frankly, they don't have sidewalk there. 4 of those are what I would consider frontage and 4 of them I would consider side lots. I mean, to the people that live there. It's literally on the side of their house versus the front of their house. So is there a right answer? I don't know. But, I mean, we're doing a major reconstruction here and moving 100-year-old trees, things of that nature. There's gonna be a lot of effect either way. I would like to make sure that we're aware of everyone's difficulties as we're going forward, especially with that meeting next week to kind of find out where it is. I don't know that you're gonna have an answer by next week. I mean, we can't get a consistency amongst 4 of us in the room, let alone, 10 of us completely, and to give staff a correct answer, per se.
Yeah, and Councilman Mallam, you bring up a great point. The timing of this discussion was in hopes to have some direction, because I'm sure we'll be getting asked these questions come time for those meetings here in a week.
Well, I'm sure I'm gonna get asked for it as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if there is a good answer, bad answer. It's probably gonna be an unliked answer either way, one way or another. So it's just, those are the things I'd like to see what it's gonna look like, how much it's gonna affect people's yards and things of that nature. Just to see what the overall effect of it. I mean, they're expanding I know I drive that road every day, at least twice a day. It's gonna affect some people pretty heavily.
Yeah. One more point I'll make with the effect of the existing sidewalk. We do in our new engineering design standards require a 5-foot minimum width for new sidewalks. A lot of these out here are 4, if not 3, because they put in years ago, and 4 used to always be the standard. So there will be a widening of the sidewalk regardless of whether we do it or the homeowners do it, to meet our new engineering standards.
So in the past on that, where we've expanded a roadway that isn't DOT funded, have we taken the sidewalk out and moved it? Or have we always required the homeowner to do it?
We generally don't even include it in a project, and if the sidewalk exists, we make it accessible by law. We pay for that. By we, I mean each of you and every citizen.
Taxpayer.
The taxpayer pays for it. We don't ask the adjacent property owners to bring it up to current ADA standards if it's already there. If there's no sidewalk there, we don't install one.
Well, the one I'm thinking about is over by Cook Complex that we redid the road and sewer and water and sidewalks there. Did we ever assess that?
I think we did the bike trail.
Be like 3rd Avenue or 2nd Avenue Southwest, over by 1800 block, 1700 block.
I'd have to go back and research that,
Yeah.
Councilman, to find out for sure whether that was.
I mean, we just did that 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's by those
No,
apartment
It was longer than that.
complex.
Oh, 3rd Avenue. Yes, 3rd Avenue Southwest. That was-
Southwest.
Okay.
We did assess that.
I mean, there's your precedent right there. If you can look at it that way.
Councilman Roby?
Then if we were to do this on behalf of the homeowners, and I'm one of those people that had to pay the assessment, I would be calling my councilman or several of them and saying, why did I have to pay for that and nobody else? These other people don't have to. So again, I think sometimes it's viewed as a city being heavy-handed, but this is how we build sidewalks and roads in the community, and I think we got to try and be consistent on it.
Boy, and I do feel for the staff. They'll be blamed. It's hard to tell the property owners this. They're mad at you. They're, you're the one standing, Marcy will be up there at the podium on Tuesday, and the rotten tomatoes are aimed at her. It's a community decision, though. It's do we pay for this out of the general taxpayer funds, or do we assess it? And if we're wanting to be consistent, that's, we are kind of taking a new tact if we pick this up. Yes.
I want to make sure I understand. Are we talking about just assessing the new sidewalks, or is that what we're discussing here? Or are we also going to be looking at assessing the improvement and the widening of the old sidewalks? I guess that's my question.
The staff recommendation was, we'll just pick up all the tab for everything. But the council has to make that call.
Okay, so we would also be assessing then for the improvement of the old sidewalks as well.
Well, that's up to you.
I mean, if that's the route that we go.
I think
Well,
that's
that's
where
what you're
I think that's
deciding.
where the 3 options come into play, Councilman Vilhauer, where we assess it all, or we assess none, or we just assess the new placement that didn't have any to begin with.
To Glenn's point. on
And there's
that-
equities and inequities in whichever route we go on that.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
there
where
are.
that 3rd Avenue, that's where I thought we did only the new sidewalk.
We didn't rebuild any old, though. And the curb was,
The curb we took care of, but they didn't have
no,
sidewalk.
They paid for their curb.
All of them?
The new ones. If there was existing curb that got widened or changed, they already paid for that once. We did not reassess. We could. I mean, that hasn't been our practice. I have to say, I don't know of any case where we have assessed for replacement once someone has made that investment.
See, that's where I'm looking at is if they paid for their sidewalk. I mean, the ones that don't have it, I mean, that's where I would feel more comfortable because frankly, they were supposed to have that. But we got, I mean, most of those, like I said, I live real close to there. I live a half a block from 10th Avenue. You know, people that have sidewalks that put them in, I mean, we're making them change it.
But suppose they've got a sidewalk that's crumbling and they got a responsibility to maintain that sidewalk anyway, and now we're gonna do it and pay for it as a city?
I get it. I get it. I didn't say it's right.
Right.
I believe Justin and Marcy had a comment they wanted to chime in on too, if we could defer to them for a second.
Sure. Justin or Marcy?
This is Marcy. I just want to do a couple clarifications for the sake of the council members. So the south side, because of the expansion of the road, we do have mostly every homeowner will have a ADA ramp being put in on their corners. So there would be essentially 3 items to think about. It's one, ADA corners that are pre-existing are going to go away. We have to put in new. Would you assess those when they may have already been assessed? The new sidewalk that's not pre-existing, which Adam is correct, Councilman Adam Lallam, it's about eight lots that don't have currently sidewalk, and then the rest of the sidewalk would be existing, but we're going to replace. So there's essentially 3 things to think about as you're having this discussion.
And we have an annual ADA project. We have never assessed for ramps or reconstruction of ramps or installation of new ramps where ramps were non-existent or substandard. We've never assessed for that in the past. So for us to assess for those ramps would be different from our past practice.
Marcy, right when you started talking, you said the south side. I assume you meant the north side?
No,
For
I
the
do
ADA
mean the
ramps?
south. The roadway is expanding both north and south to keep the center line in a consistent manner going across that. So just about every corner, yes, every corner on the south side will have a existing sidewalk or a new one put in, and the other ones will be replaced.
You're talking where a corner ramp exists, Marcy. We're proposing to reconstruct and replace those with the widening of the road.
Correct. And putting in corner ramps where there is currently sidewalk with a non-compliant ramp.
And by sidewalk, you mean north-south running sidewalk on the corner of that block,
Yep,
not the east-west along 10th, just for clarity there.
correct. Thank you, Dee.
Yeah.
All right, Councilwoman Manti, your hand is up. Did you want to speak? It's been up for a while.
I thought I let it down.
Oh, okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
I'm sitting here trying to think if I've ever voted to not assess. I think the one time I didn't was when I think the case was made that the city damaged the sidewalk. They were using it, driving trucks on it, so we agreed to at least, I don't know if we funded all of it or part of it, but we agreed to repair that because I think the resolution was the city had caused a lot of that damage. Other than that, I don't know if we've really given a lot of assessments in the past. I know there's been a few, but not many.
Councilman Helene?
Thank you, Mayor. One comment. I reserve the right to change my mind before the actual vote, but I am inclined to support what Don is saying about assessing. One question, why on the existing sidewalks that are not up to the 5 feet space requirement, let's say if they're old sidewalks, 3 feet, 4 feet wide or whatever, why are we forcing them to upgrade? And and assess that, or if we do assess that. That's a question that I have. Because they bought the house with the sidewalk there, unaware that the ordinance may have changed or changed in the process or during the time that they owned the house.
The ordinance didn't change, and the standards may have changed, and the, right. I don't know that it's, Marcy walked them all, so I let her explain the condition that they're in. It's not just simply because of the width, but some of them were in poor condition. Is that right, Marcy?
Correct. And most of those 3-foot ones are much, much older, 1930s era, and they have heaved over time with roots from trees. So the majority of the small ones that aren't compliant are needing replaced anyways.
Okay. We need to wrap this up, but is someone wanting to make a motion, because we don't have one on the floor?
Mayor, if
Yes,
I might, I think
Councilman
I had my
Bueller.
hand up there.
Sorry,
I do have
didn't see
a
it.
couple of questions and just some thoughts as well on this matter. Would this even come up had we not initiated this project? Would we even be looking at sidewalks right now had we not? I doubt it very much. And I, to Glenn's point earlier, that concerns me quite a bit, that we're not asking the folks to the south to do this. And it's simply because of the issues with driveway lengths and availability of property, but we're looking at this and I think if you've got a sidewalk that needs to be widened, you might as well rip it out and start from scratch. I mean, I'm not sure how you go about widening a sidewalk. I've had a little bit of experience with concrete work, but these folks are going to experience some property loss with this project. And I'll just say at this point, from all the things that I've heard, and there's been a lot of these landowners have changed ownership in these properties several times, probably since they were constructed. I am not inclined to assess the landowners.
All right. Anyone else want to weigh in or make a motion?
I will make a motion to the effect of what Bruce just said, that we do not assess the landowners.
On anyone?
Correct.
So we have a motion to pay for the sidewalks at city expense.
Albertson.
Motion by Vilhauer, second by Bueller. Any further discussion? Councilman Roby?
Being respectful of the motion, the second, I would expect every landowner to fight an assessment from this point going forward. I think the precedent, if this passes, and again, I'm trying to be respectful, I get both sides of it, but this is how we fund sidewalks and streets, and if we just assess somebody that came up here earlier in the meeting over on Third Avenue, was it? Guys, this is how we do it in the city. Now, if we're gonna change, then it's gonna be a big change. It's gonna have ramifications on streets and sidewalks going forward. I'm opposed.
Any other discussion? Councilman Lallam?
I personally would rather see us assessing where there is no sidewalk, because they've never had the initial upfront, expense. And I'd also be in favor of assessing any sidewalk that was deemed need to be replaced due to lack of just updating and, and disrepair. So, I will be opposing that as well.
Anyone else before we take a vote? All right. The motion is that the city picks up the tab for everything. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Okay, Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Pauline. No. Lallam,
No.
Manti,
No.
Rademski,
No.
Roby,
Nay?
Vilhauer,
Aye.
Y.
No.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 6-3, motion fails.
So that sounds like we're assessing, but Are we
Can
assessing?
we make a new motion?
Yeah, we could have a new motion.
I'd make the motion that we assess where there is no particular sidewalk currently, as well as identify sidewalks that are in poor disrepair that need to be replaced, and we assess those, and the other ones that are in good, frankly, in good condition that would not have needed a repair, that the city pays that.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Lallam and a second by Helene. Is there discussion on this? Councilman Vilhar?
How are you going to define what's in disrepair?
I thought
We have standards.
Do-
that-
do
Yeah,
we?
design standards.
Yes,
Okay.
we do have a sidewalk assessment sheet that
So,
we
so
use.
it's not, so it is objective?
It's
We're-
very objective.
Okay.
We have, you can have a quarter of an inch of change in elevation. So, any other discussion? Beth, do you have your hand up? Or is it just still up? It's still up. Okay, so this motion is to assess where it's new or where the improvement doesn't meet our standards, so we're replacing. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
No,
Helene,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Vilhauer,
No.
Y.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. I think we can do that other item at another meeting, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor.
Yeah.
That'd be perfect. We can postpone that. I just want to say too, I figured that'd be a split discussion. I appreciate the council's input. We at least have direction now. We can get the resolution of necessities and things like that in motion, because those are all also take time to accomplish, and so we appreciate the direction. We'll move forward accordingly.
Right, thank you. Is there any other new business? Not seeing any. We will not be going into executive session, so I declare the meeting adjourned, and we're going to take a break. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back with the city council meeting at 5:43.